Welcome to Wines We Drink, a podcast for wine lovers and learners. I'm Charlotte Norsworthy Varnum, and together with my counterpart Keith Herndon, we'll be exploring a new wine each week. Keith is a lover of wine, and I'm a learner of wine, and we hope you'll sip along with us. Welcome to our show, everyone. This is the Wines We Drink podcast, and we are so excited to have you along for this season's 6th episode. We are officially at the midpoint of season 5, and boy, do we have a great show planned for you. I'm Charlotte Varnum, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host and certified wine sommelier, Keith Herndon.
Charlotte, yes, we have reached the midpoint of season 5, and you are correct. What a great show we have in store for our listeners. I'm excited to get it started today.
We have established a tradition on the Wines We Drink podcast that our loyal listeners already know about. We celebrate the 6th episode, the halfway point, in what we call our case of episodes. So are you ready to celebrate, Keith?
I'm always ready to celebrate, but particularly, you know how much I love to pop the cork on a bottle of bubbly.
Yes.
So today, we're going upscale with a luscious bottle of French champagne.
So luxury. In our 4 previous seasons, we've never celebrated with actual champagne. So we've opened some excellent sparkling wines, right, in those episodes, starting with one from New Mexico. Then we had 2 from Napa Valley. And last year's was a French Cremant. So if you'd like to revisit those episodes or any of the previous ones, you can find us on all major podcast platforms. We also posted a complete episode guide at wineswedrink.com.
When it came time to select our wines for this season, we both agreed that we wanted to celebrate the midpoint of season 5 with champagne, right? But how to select only one was puzzling us, right?
Yes.
I mean, there are famous brands out there like Dom Perignon and Moet and Chandon. They were just a bit too pricey.
Yeah,
right?
That's fair.
Even though we're going upscale today, that was I am really fond of grower champagnes, right? Telmont and Jeepers come to mind. But in the end, we took the suggestion for the bottle that we're featuring today from last week's featured interview.
That's right. So we are using Keith's book, Wine Conversations, Exploring Meaning, Mystery, and Myth, as the foundation for this season's shows. And so last week's episode was based on the interview with Nicole Marchese, the winemaker at Farniente in Napa Valley. Keith asked Nicole about what she likes to drink when she's not drinking a Farniente wine, and her answer gave us today's bottle. Take a listen to this short clip from Keith's interview.
I love champagne. It's a small grower called L'Armandier Bernier that my husband and I visited, and our local wine shop carries it, and so he always lets us know when he has it in stock. And so that's one that I have we had such a great experience visiting it, and we really like it, and so that's one of my favorites.
So there you have it. It's a grower champagne from L'Armandier Bernier. Specifically, we're uncorking the non-vintage Longitude label, which is an extra brut Blanc de Blanc. We'll explain all of that, okay? But for now, let me just say that it is impossible to go wrong with a Nicole Marchese recommendation.
I would say we have not been steered awry so far this season by her. So let's begin by revisiting your annual lesson on the differences between champagne and sparkling wine.
Yes, it is kind of an annual lesson now, isn't it?
It's a good reminder for me as well.
Right. So I'm always happy to launch into my bubbly tutorial. The wine we're drinking today is champagne, but the term champagne is only allowed to be used by sparkling wines produced in the Champagne region of France. The producers there actively regulate the use of the term champagne. As we know, that doesn't mean other regions around the world can't produce sparkling wine using the traditional champagne method. They just can't call it champagne. That's why in other parts of France we get Cremant, in Spain it's Cava, in Germany it's Sect, in South Africa it's Cape Classique. Many other places like the U.S., for example, it's simply labeled as sparkling wine. Right?
And that's true, and but you can't stop there, right? You're on a roll with this bubbly tutorial. So can you explain what you mean by the traditional champagne method?
Yeah, sure. In the traditional method, an initial fermentation begins in the tanks, but the bubbles are created through a secondary fermentation that takes place inside the bottle. The wine makers add a mixture of yeast and sugar, initiating the second fermentation. Then they capture the carbon dioxide inside the bottle, which creates a lot of pressure and gives us these bubbles. That pressure can be up to 90 pounds per square inch.
Yeah, that's more than 2 car tires.
Absolutely. So a non-vintage champagne must be aged for 15 months in its bottle and spend at least 12 months in contact with the lees. Those are the dead yeast cells, left over from the fermentation. They settle at the bottom of the bottle, but through a process known as riddling, the bottles are gradually tilted and rotated to move the leaves to the neck. The neck is then frozen, and then the ice plug containing the leaves is expelled, removing the sediment, and that's a process that is called disgorging. So that leads us to the next step. Okay? A small amount of wine and sugar, which is referred to as the dosage, is added to fill the bottle back up and adjust the sweetness level. Right? Then we move to the final step when the bottle is sealed and that larger cork that you associate with champagne is inserted into the bottle, and then that cork is secured with a wire cage. Remember all of that pressure, right?
Right.
You have to contain that cork, right? Or you could have a bottle that would explode.
Wow, that's such a good reminder about how special the champagne method is. It naturally makes sense to me why it is used for celebration, because it's special as well. So thank you, Keith, for that thorough explanation of that traditional champagne method. And now, in keeping with our tradition, I will repeat the mantra, which is that all champagnes are sparkling wines, but not all sparkling wines are champagne.
Excellent.
We need to get that on a hat or a t-shirt or something. So let's go ahead and explore more about today's bottle. I was so impressed to read about this label's extensive history. The Larmandier and Bernier families' involvement in the wine industry goes all the way back to the 1760s. So before our country was even a country. And when you look at the winery today, the Larmandier family is still in control.
Yes, it remains a family business and one committed to sustainable practices. I mean, they were out in front in the 90s with eliminating herbicides, for example. Even before that was widely accepted in the Champagne region, right?
I mean, they are biodynamic pioneers. Good for them.
Right. Today's bottle is not a vintage release, which means that the juice used to make this wine is a blend of recent harvest. But the winemakers tell us at least 40% of this blend is coming from a perpetual reserve that began in 2004.
Wow. I mean, and Keith, you mentioned earlier that this wine is labeled Blanc de Blanc and is 100% Chardonnay.
Yes, and the grapes come from a group of vineyards in the Côte de Blanc, which form a line close to the fourth meridian, hence the name longitude.
Okay. Wow, well, that's some good setup. I think we've done all the setup that we can take for this bottle. I think it's time to pop the cork and sample today's first official champagne selection of wines we drink. Woo!
Oh, don't you love that sound?
The best.
Oh, right.
Man.
Oh, my goodness.
And as you're pouring, I am immediately drawn into that beautiful golden yellow color. I mean, wow.
Yes, it's a bright gold hue, and just look at those bubbles, a lively effervescence coming out of this glass.
Oh, absolutely. And I love lifting up a glass of champagne. It tickles your nose a little bit. Oh my gosh. And this doesn't disappoint. It's got some great bubbles, and that's just lifting those beautiful aromas right to your nose.
Yeah, well, what aromas are you detecting there?
Well, there is a lemon citrus that is very noticeable.
Yes.
And maybe some tart green apple. Very bright.
Yes. The stone fruit notes, apple, pear, they just lure me into this glass of champagne. Then you get those floral notes. I mean, one description I read called it almond blossoms.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And of course, there's that bready brioche quality that you want to expect from a really wonderful glass of champagne. Oh, let's just go in and let's have that first sip.
Let's do it. Cheers.
Right. Cheers. Yes.
Oh my gosh. That first sip does not disappoint. You've got acid, crisp, minerality. All of those are applying here. Those stone fruits really remain. I mean, especially that pear that you were saying. I mean, that is so crystal clear. And there is more citrus. Tart grapefruit, right? I'm getting. I'm going to go back in. Wow.
Right. I'm also blown away by how dry it is.
Yes.
You know, it's labeled extra brut, which is the driest style of champagne, but I wasn't expecting such an austere wine, you know, driven by minerality and chalkiness. I mean, the production notes let you know that this is a very intentional style, right? Remember when I was talking about the method, the dosage, which is when they go back in and add that extra, you know, at the end, they only added 2 grams of sugar per liter. That's basically nothing.
Yeah. I mean, and so if you want a bottle that delivers on the traditional qualities of champagne, but comes in extremely dry, then this extra brut is for you. And it's for me too. I mean, there is not a hint of sweetness here, and it is fantastic.
Right. We mentioned how the vineyard locations contributed to the label name longitude, but the winemaker said the word also means length. And for me, that ties directly into this wonderfully long, mineral, chalky finish you get. You know, it's just a delightful champagne on so many levels.
That's right. It does linger longer. And, you know, we have enjoyed drinking and talking about this champagne so much. I'm sure our listeners want to know, though, how much they would have to pay for this bottle. We were talking about some pricey bottles earlier. So what do we have going on here?
Remember, we're celebrating today.
Okay, true. But that's what we say when the price may cause a little sticker shock. So,
well, we're not in the Dom Perignon range,
okay.
but we are approaching the Moet and Chandon range.
Okay.
I paid $90 for the bottle that we're drinking today. The Vivino app lists the national average at around $101. So clearly, this isn't an everyday bubbly, right? But it can be that very special wine for that very special celebration.
That's exactly right. And, you know, like the 6th episode in season 5, I would say, that's our very special occasion.
Yeah, even though this may be a $100 bottle, it is also one of exceptional quality.
Agreed.
Okay? Decanter magazine has given it 95 points. The Wine Advocate awarded it 92 points. And the Vivino app ranks it among the top 1% of all wines in the world.
Wow, a top 1% wine in the world. Don't you think our listeners are expecting us to pair this exquisite wine with some caviar or maybe a fancy dish with truffles or something?
One would think. I did see a pairing that suggested wild salmon sashimi, which would be excellent, I think.
Yeah.
But we're not going there, are we, Chef Charlotte?
No, we're not. I am not a sushi chef today. But when editing your book, I was fascinated by a suggested champagne pairing from one of the experts you interviewed, Leslie Miller, who's a Minneapolis-based sommelier, has a really unpretentious take on what works well with champagne. Here's a clip from that interview.
Well, I'll tell you this. Every year on my birthday, I have fried chicken and champagne.
Okay, fried chicken and champagne. That is what spoke to me. So that's what we're pairing with our Larmandier Bernier with some crispy, not too greasy, fried chicken.
This seems spot on for Chef Charlotte. Those who follow you on Instagram know that you've been cooking your way through the Dolly Parton cookbook this year,
That's
right?
exactly right. And so that comes up here today as well. The recipe for the fried chicken you're about to eat is from those very pages. So let's enjoy.
Okay, sure. Okay, you've got us some fried chicken here on the plates, right?
Yep, that's exactly right.
Okay.
It's a buttermilk, thyme, rosemary.
Oh my
fried
goodness.
chicken. So take a
Buttermilk,
bite.
thyme, and rosemary. Oh my gosh. I don't know if the microphone picked up the crunchy crispiness there, but oh my gosh. Okay. I'm going in with the champagne.
Man.
Wow. A pairing like this works so well due to all those contrasting textures.
Right.
You know, I first tried fried chicken and champagne a few years ago with Todd Hurt, the proprietor of Tapped Athens Wine Tasting Market. It worked then and it works now.
I agree. It's something about the bubbly, acidic champagne that cuts through the richness and greasiness of the fried chicken. The champagne's effervescence and the bready notes complements the chicken's, crispy crust. I mean, what's not to like?
Well, it's just a wonderful pairing. But I like the special herbs that you've included, from that recipe in the in the crust. Those that you said, rosemary and thyme.
Rosemary and thyme, yeah.
Right. It really, really complements the champagne. It's very, very nice.
Something about the floral, maybe.
Maybe. This bottle comes in at only 12.5% alcohol by volume, so you're not going to have any alcohol, influences to interfere with the flavors either.
That's true. Yeah, it's certainly a great pairing wine, and it's maybe not one that many would consider at first. And then especially throwing in some fried chicken in there, maybe not something you would consider at first either. But when you think about why it works, when you get those textures and those flavors together, knowing what we know about the wine, it's a no-brainer.
Well, I'm going to thank Leslie Miller for reminding us that this was a great pairing to have. Yes, right. So this is certainly one of my go-to pairings. I'm going to thank Chef Charlotte.
Yes.
Thanks,
Dolly Parton for the recipe.
Well, just a lot of people to thank on this, right?
Lots of thanks in our 6th celebration.
All right. So let's have a few more bites of champagne and chicken while we take a short break. We'll return soon with the show segment that we call The Finish.
Welcome back. This is the portion of the show we call The Finish. Keith, how are we wrapping up today's show?
Well, we built today's episode around celebration and using it as a reason to feature a really incredibly special champagne. People have been doing what we did today for centuries, right? Celebrating special moments with wine, often champagne. So for today's finish, let's talk more about wine and its role in our culture and how that may be changing a bit.
That sounds intriguing.
Well, as we talked about last week a little bit, we're at a precarious time in the wine industry with sales falling significantly around the world. And I firmly believe that part of that has to do with consumers getting fed up with how complex wine can be. We've made it harder and harder for consumers to approach wine from that spirit of joy and celebration. Our book, Wine Conversation, includes an interview with Dr. Clinton Lee, the founder of the Asia Pacific Wine and Spirit Institute. He succinctly defined what I'm talking about. Listen to this very brief clip from his interview.
Because I think that consumers have been taught a very tunnel vision type of education. And if that was broadened, they wouldn't see it as being pretentious.
Pretentious. We hear that word so much in describing wine culture today. And as a wine educator, it's part of my role to help change that. If we don't, we will just continue to lose younger consumers.
Yeah, I see that as well. I will say that we've contributed to that today with our fried chicken and champagne pairing. I feel like that's exactly the kind of thing that we need to emphasize more. I mean, that fried chicken recipe was from the Dolly Parton cookbook. I mean, there's nothing pretentious about that. She is all about togetherness and welcoming and accessibility.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. For wine to regain its footing, it has to be approachable, and to make it approachable means finding the fun in it.
Right.
Showing people how we can use wine to learn about new countries and new cultures, and just coming together for that fun celebration.
Absolutely. And Dr. Lee addresses that in his interview. Even furthermore, he put it this way, quote, "Taste 1,000 wines and you can become adept at tasting, but learning about the world of the grape and the entire passageway, as it were, from the cradle to the grave, diminishes the pretentious perspective." I mean, how well said.
That is a great quote from Dr. Lee to illustrate the point that we're talking about. To break down the mystery of wine, we have to go beyond merely what's in the glass, right? We have to do a better job of telling the stories of the people who are making the wine and the farmers who grow the grapes. Wine is intensely personal, but it doesn't feel that way for many consumers as they stand in front of that wine shelf trying to decide what to buy. That was one of the motivating factors behind the book, to tell more personal stories. And that leads to my shameless plug, right?
Nice.
You can buy Wine Conversations on Amazon and through our local distributor, Neighborhood Books. We have the links to those at wineswedrink.com, our website.
I mean, those conversations, as well as the conversations that we have on this show, we really hope kind of continue to illustrate that wine is a journey that all can partake in. But back to the shameless plug, I don't think we've actually mentioned this since the first episode, but since we are celebrating today, we have to celebrate the fact that that book, our book, won silver in the Nonfiction Book Awards. So congrats again, Keith.
Oh, thanks again. I mean, I guess, that is something really worth celebrating, right?
We're celebrating a lot today. So back to our topic, though. How does the wine industry move forward?
Well, it has to start listening to and paying attention to the younger generation of consumers. So much of what is romanticized by older wine consumers just doesn't matter to the younger ones.
What do you mean? Do you have some examples?
Yes. I'm going to pull out an article as I was preparing for this episode that the drinks business published back in March. The headline was, "Is the ritual of wine facing extinction?" The article concluded, quote, "Traditional wine rituals are falling by the wayside as Gen Z embraces convenience over ceremony," end quote, right? The article reported some survey data that found only 43% of Gen Z had ever used a corkscrew, and only 18% had ever even experimented with using a decanter. The point was that Gen Z has a grab-and-go mentality, and that convenience is far more important than taking the time to decant a wine, right?
No, I mean, I certainly understand that perspective as someone who is personally on the cusp between a Gen Z and a millennial. It just depends on who you ask. But I also notice kind of anecdotally, as Gen Z gets older and more further removed from the pandemic, that they, or we, if I'm included in that, are engaging more in social gatherings, experience creation. I mean, heck, I feel like so many of the folks in my friend group are making lattes at home and experimenting with ceremonial grade matcha at home. And so I do see some of those trends perhaps in other beverage ceremony, if you will. So I don't know, that tendency is exactly why I love doing this show, for example. Social gatherings, creating experiences, romanticizing the little things in life. But I also recognize that the wine industry's image doesn't always really line up with the expectations of Gen Z, so maybe that's a little portion of it as well, especially when it comes to issues such as sustainability.
That drinks business article that I made reference to, talks about that exact point. Gen Z wine consumers expect the wines that they drink to put the environment first. The industry is changing, and it's coming around to that. But I think it's doing a really lousy job of communicating that through its labeling. I mean, we featured a fantastic wine on today's show that has a great story to tell. I mean, it's a family-owned business with an incredibly sustainable pedigree, but none of that is on its label.
Yeah.
Right? You have to dig to find the story, and most young people, well, heck, most consumers in general, aren't going to take the time to do that.
Absolutely. There's a bit of removal even still there. But it's really interesting to see, and maybe it will eventually find its way with this aging Gen Z population. And we're going to keep telling these stories on Wines We Drink. And maybe we can influence a few more Gen Z wine consumers. So could you tell our listeners, how are we not going to be pretentious next week?
Yeah. So we're going to try to avoid pretentiousness. We were somewhat pretentious today with this
Fair.
really wonderful bottle of champagne. But we're going to Morocco by way of Minneapolis.
Okay.
I'll explain next week, but neither of those places have a reputation for a pretentious wine culture.
There we go. Okay. Well, I doubt many of our listeners are typically associating wine with either of those locations. So this is going to be fun. So until then, everyone, cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Wines We Drink. Listen to our other episodes anywhere you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow us on Instagram at The Wines We Drink, and check out our episode guides at wineswedrink.com. Cheers.